Welcome back. We are Netherbolt, and in this chapter of the series, we will be diving into the XR input system. In the previous video, we started with the installation and setup of the XR plugin management. The importing of the XR interaction toolkit, we also set up a simple playing field where we can test our game, and added input systems to our controller. And lastly, we tested it to see that it works with the simple setup. For this chapter, there will only be 4 things that we will be doing. The first one is replacing the simple sphere that we used as controllers from the previous video into the controllers that are provided by the sample package of the XR Interaction Toolkit. The next is exploring Unity's input action system and how we can use it in our game. The third one is utilizing the XRI default input action map, which is a preset for the input action system of the VR controllers. And lastly, the XR interaction debugger. The first thing we need to do is replace the sphere that we used as a simple object to see our controllers into the model or prefab provided by the XR interaction toolkit. Let us delete the sphere object child to each controller and find the model prefab function in the XR controller component and place a prefab in it. Just drag one of the corresponding prefab into the XR controller component and it will spawn the model automatically when the game starts. We can also remove some of the components inside the controllers, like the XR Interactor line visual, the line renderer, and the XR Ray Interactor, since we won't be needing it for this chapter. After that, we can now test our scene and see that the controllers are replaced and it spawns only when the game starts. We're going to explore a bit of Unity's input action system to see how the system works for VR. We right-click on the project folder and scroll down to the input actions to create our own input action system as practice. Let's just name this VR Tutorial Input Action and double-click on it to open it. Now we have this action map. For this example, let's say we need to create an easy movement system for our game using keyboard controls. First, we start by clicking on the plus icon to add a new action map, and let's name it default. We can then add a new action and have different bindings to each action. In this action, it can be a movement action where we add bindings like WASD. We add a binding by finding the input like the W key for moving forward. We can add another binding by clicking on the plus and find the input like A key on the keyboard and so on and so forth. Then, we can just add a script that will check what inputs are being pressed. But since we are utilizing the XR Interaction Toolkit, we will be using the one that is already provided by the package. We can find the input action system by going to the sample folder. Let's see it by double-clicking the XRI default input action. We can see here that there are a lot of action maps that we would need to do if we did it manually. Action maps for the head, the controllers, interactions, and locomotions, each having every binding. For example, the active on the left hand interaction action map. This binding checks the input of the trigger on the controller.